Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Advice. So today I'm asking the big question, the one that seems to be hard to answer, and that's how fast is the new 2021 Ford Bronco going to be? Now, of course, I'm talking about the 2-door and 4-door models that have yet to come out, that are scheduled more for late spring or summer. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering how fast that these vehicles should be, and I'm going to have to use a bit of common sense mixed with some math to figure out how fast these vehicles are going to be, because so far on Ford.com and across the various reviews I was reading, I just could not find how fast these vehicles have been confirmed to be. So we'll work on a bit of math and common sense, and we'll get to the bottom of this in just a short moment. Welcome back. We're going to be covering the big question, the question that doesn't seem to have an answer yet, and that's how fast is a 2021 Ford Bronco going to be? What kind of acceleration are we going to get? Now, acceleration always seems to be measured in 0 to 60 mile per hour time, or 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time. So that's what we're going to be using as a base of measure, and that's what we need when using our common sense and mathematical data from both the Ranger and the F150. Now, calculating the speed of acceleration of the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder engine on the Bronco is actually going to be fairly simple. Just a bit of common sense, and that common sense dictates on a few points. The first of those points is that the Ford Ranger, we already know how fast it is, and the new Bronco is using the Ford Ranger platform. Now, there could be a slight difference in acceleration time from the Ranger because, you know, the Bronco is going to be just a little bit higher than the Ranger, and a little bit wider, not much, and probably not enough to really make much of a difference when it comes to overall speed. Now, of course, there will be a little extra wind friction when accelerating, and that will have a bigger impact on high speeds, but on lower speeds, going up to 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles per hour, it should be very minimal. So, you know, the other two factors that we have is that the new Bronco, whether you get the 2-door or the 4-door, if you get it with the 10-speed automatic transmission and the 2.3 liter engine, it's a straight 4-cylinder engine, you know, it's the same engine that the Ranger uses, and it's the same transmission that the Ranger uses. And, you know, third factor, the first factor we mentioned, it's the same platform, it's the same frame. And, you know, I will talk about that frame in another video, but that frame is going to be, you know, really great for off-roading because it's a boxed-in frame. But, you know, getting back to acceleration time, the 2020 Ford Ranger accelerates from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.1 seconds, tested by Car and Driver. So at 6.1 seconds, using the same motor, the same transmission, and the same platform, you know, we can have a pretty intelligent guess, very fair to assume that the Bronco will also have a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 6.1 seconds. Now, of course, that could be a little bit off, a very slight difference because of wind resistance on the Bronco, being that the Bronco is higher and wider, and I'll get into those differences in another video where I cover dimensions, but it's similar enough to assume that the time is going to be very, very similar. Now, of course, the mapping that they use on the transmission, the mapping could be different, but then again, I would think that will make a small difference. What might make quite a bit of difference is if you get the Sasquatch package. I'm thinking those really big, huge 35-inch tires definitely could affect acceleration times. But that, you know, that's a little bit too hard to measure out. And, you know, if it does come down to something, it's, you know, it's not going to be 1 second. I would think that it can maybe make a difference of 0.1 of a second. But you will really need to wait for the vehicle to show up and be tested live in real life to really know what the difference of those tires will make. But if we're comparing, the regular tires on a Bronco versus the regular tires on the Ranger, I think 6.1 second really is that number that we will be using. So now for the hard part. It's a little bit more complicated and it requires a bit of math and a bit of a formula to figure out what kind of acceleration we're going to get from 0 to 60 miles per hour out of the 2021 Ford Bronco. But the good news is we do have some data that we can use that will make this possible. So the data that makes all of this possible is that the F150 already has a 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine in it. So that's that 6-cylinder twin turbo, and it's matted to the 10-speed automatic transmission. Now, the 2021 Bronco is getting that exact motor, and it's getting the same transmission. It does have, less weight, and of course, taking that weight difference between an F-150 Super Crew with a 5.5-foot box and 2.7 liter engine, and comparing that to the weight of the Bronco when equipped with the same motor and the same transmission, makes all of this possible. So, today I'm gonna need my notes, and I have to put on a collar to do this mathematical work. And it does, I think we really can come down to pretty much almost spot on the numbers that we're gonna see come out, in a few months. Whether, it's 3 months or 6 months, that's gonna depend on when the Bronco actually hits market, the big Bronco that is. So, the math I used on this is that when we take the weight of the new Bronco on Ford.com, they're saying that it should weigh at about 4,450 pounds. Now, if you take that weight and you divide it by the weight of an F-150, which is give or take, depending on the accessories, 4,750 pounds, and then we multiply that by the acceleration speed of the F-150, which is 5.9 seconds, what you get is 5.53 seconds. So, we took some known factors to figure out the unknown factor, and that's the acceleration time of the 2021 Bronco with a 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine and 10-speed transmission. So, are we gonna end up exactly on 5.53? Once again, that's gonna come down to the gearing and the mapping for that motor and transmission. So that could create a small difference. Something else that could create a small difference as well, of course, is whether you're looking at the base model, which comes on 16s and much smaller tires than, for example, the Wild Track, which is coming with 35-inch tires. Now, if the overall dimension between the Wild Track and the base model ends up being the same, it shouldn't play a factor, the size tire. But if it really is going to be overall, 2 or 3 inches higher, usually I looked across a few forums, and generally what people use as a good rule of thumb is for every inch of tire that you add beyond the original dimension, that you lose 0.1 of a second of acceleration. So, are we going to end up with 0 to 60 time of 5.7 or 5.8 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour with the Wild Track model? Quite possibly. But that's all going to depend on whether Ford uses the overall total dimension between a base model and the Wild Track, whether that's going to be the same, or if the Wild Track with its 35s or the Badlands with its 33s and a half, if there really are going to be overall a larger dimension, we might lose anywhere from 0.1 per inch, so anywhere from 0.1 of a second all the way to 0.3 of a second. Now, there are of course other factors, and the remaining factors are height and width, because that creates wind resistance. Now, the Bronco, which is pretty cool to know, it's actually going to be higher than an F-150. So an F-150, you've got your height coming in at 71.5 inches. And the Bronco, depending on the model you get, is going to range between 71.9 inches, so minute difference, wouldn't make a difference on acceleration, but all the way to 75.2 inches in height for the wild track. Mind you, the Bronco's on the Ranger platform, and the Ranger platform is making this Bronco a little less wide than an F-150. So what we gain in height and what that causes in regards to wind restriction, we're probably going to make up in the width. So overall, I'm thinking wind resistance is going to end up being a very minute, if insignificant, factor in the acceleration. So I think 5.53 seconds to get to 100 kilometers an hour is what we are going to see when they finally do give us numbers on acceleration. So there you have it. Acceleration numbers for the 2.7 liter EcoBoost as well as the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder. So I hope this has been helpful, and if it has, please like and subscribe.